it safe. They try to regulate, they can't stand. But some choose to always have that choice. So if the blame falls on the gun of all your slayers, then who takes the fall? And yes, lawyers, they say let's ban them all. Ooh, they say let's ban them all. So if the blame falls on the gun of all your slayers, then who takes the fall? And yes, the lawyers, they say let's ban them all. Yeah, so now slayers, they won't take the fall. And poor lawyers, they'll try to save us all. Ooh, they'll try to save us all. They'll try to save us all. No good can come from this. They'll try to save us all.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rock Pal Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill Season Ticket Holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. We are live on YouTube, and as some of you may notice, if you're watching on YouTube, I came straight from the office. You know, you throw a pair of jeans on, but I'm still rocking a little bit of business cash, and it just made me laugh. Aaron Quinn of Cover One once said one of the funniest things in the world to me. He had asked me for my help. You know, we're not friends. Like we're friends in the sense that we've had dinner a bunch of times. We have a group chat where we make fun of kind of the same things or laugh about the same things. And at this, like,
what you are is a business acquaintance.
Yeah, we don't hang out as friends. Aaron Quinn doesn't come to my house and have drinks the way Chris does, or the way Iman or some of the other guys that you see here do.
Mostly because he lives in Tonawanda.
I mean, that's a whole thing to unpack there unto itself. It's hilarious he chose Tonawanda. But I digress. Aaron Quinn once asked me to help him buy a grill. He goes, it's no chains, no bill swag. Yeah, Steve Noble, there is no bill swag. So Aaron Quinn calls me and says, hey, man. In fact, he didn't even call because we don't have each other's phone numbers. We just have DMs through Twitter. And he was like, oh, I just bought this grill and I have no way to get it to my house because I don't own a truck. And I was like, well, I drive a pickup truck, Aaron. I can come help you. So I show up, I meet him at Home Goods. He bought like a clearance Weber, got a great deal on it. Admittedly, an epic deal on a brand new Weber Spirit 3 grill, I believe. And I show up and we meet each other. Like I meet him at his house and I pick him up and he meets me and we get out and he's looking at me and goes, this is weird. And I go, what? And he says, I know you outside of this. He goes, I know podcast you. I know hang out at the bar with the podcast people you. It strikes me. He goes, it's unsettling to me that I'm now seeing you out here in the wild in dress shoes and slacks with a button-down shirt and a tie on because you just came from the office like you're a real person. He goes, I know better. I know who you are underneath all of this. And I started laughing. I go, you are 100% correct. Behind this glossy veneer of dress clothes lies just an absolute hunk of garbage. And nobody knows it. Hey, and for those of you who might be my coworkers listening, welcome to the show. Guys, It's been fun. Chris and I are both rocking matching quarter zips, which is unsettling. I don't like being dressed the same way Chris is. And we're here. Chris, show the people.
I'm a huge quarter zip guy. This I got at Kohl's. Generally, if I'm going to go get a quarter zip, I go to Niagara Falls and I go to the J. Crew outlet. Chris
D'Amato, the Rock Pal Report Uncanny Valley edition. Yes. This is why I like the live shows, guys. Thank you for everybody who showed up tonight. The reason we've convened this nonsense for another evening, I'll say this, it is funny. If you look at the Bills' salary cap situation and our fan base's ambition of just obtaining this massive upgrade, maybe even two of them in the same offseason cycle, I can't help but think about, like, how many indicators do we need that this, like, maybe things on the defensive line haven't worked so far? Because, Chris, when you have a whole portion of your fan base, an overwhelming portion of your fan base who's clamoring, screaming into the ether for a dynamic trade and free agency acquisitions and all this stuff on your defensive line, it's not like they haven't been trying, right?
Yeah.
So if you want evidence that it failed, right? You're talking, you've got all these capologists and people going, well, where can we find the money to take some big swings? Chris, I hate to say it, but three of the biggest names on your list of realistic moves to find cap relief, they're all on the defensive line. Oh, no. And the worst part is, nobody would balk at their departure. Greg Rousseau, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. AJ Epinesa saves a few million if we cut him this year. Von Miller saves $8 million if he's released before June 1st, $17 million if it's after June 1st. If you throw in the fact that in 2026, Ed Oliver will save $8 million in cap space if you release him next offseason, and that most fans would not fight you over it, you have to look at it and call it what it is. We love Brandon Beane. We like the job that he's done, but it didn't hit. What you tried to accomplish here on the defensive line did not land. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to acknowledge it. There are guys we like, but at the same time, there's not a single person on the defensive line who you would consider a franchise cornerstone type talent. Is there, Chris?
No.
And with that in mind, it's not hard to see why people are screaming for an upgrade. Why people who want to see a team that fell just short of a Super Bowl, again, be aggressive in upgrading the defense. Because it was the defense in that game that let us down, as it typically is in the postseason. And at the same time, while everybody's off doing their annual salary cap deep dives and all of this stuff, just like the guys over at Cover One, at 9 p.m. tonight, as soon as this show ends, Chris and I are going to end this. We're going to go over there to the comment section for Greg Thompson's salary cap show, and we're going to heckle everybody's wardrobe. Right? I mean, that's why I felt like I couldn't throw on a hoodie and then criticize somebody else's wardrobe if I didn't at least try to look presentable, right?
Yeah.
So much of the conversation is, what star players can we afford? How can we massage the cap? What do we do to get this guy or that name? And who do we squeeze in? What new shiny thing can we buy? The reality is that while I too want to see the Buffalo Bills go make a big move, there's going to be repercussions. Super Mexican, I want tacos. That's who. Me. This guy right here. Stuff him in my face. I'm starving. I think that that's where we as a fan base get caught up in this. And I want to take a look at the other side of the coin. For everybody who wants to see these giant, hey, we want a franchise shifting move. We went out and got a Von Miller. Didn't land. Okay, well, we want a Von Miller 2.0 in either a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett. When you look at it, like, there's going to be repercussions if you make a move like that. Notably in the form of at least one current player we think of, or that was at least during this 2024 season part of the core of an AFC championship team, not coming back. It's a guy who might be a cap casualty as soon as the 2025 offseason, just in order to make the numbers work if you were to go out and chase a notable acquisition. That becomes a problem. Oh, yeah, no, Chris, Super Mexican. You know what's a problem? Mighty Taco.
I like Mighty Taco.
You would like Mighty Taco. It's for white people. And I can say that as a half-Tino. So here's the thing. I worked at Mighty Taco. And did you know that when they make the meat, the ground beef, it comes frozen. Like they half cook it and then they put it in the oven and finish it and like thaw it and finish it cooking. Like they par cook it, freeze it. You take the pan, you put it in the oven, it finishes. But when it comes out, there is a lake of grease in this pan. I, being a conscientious worker, because I'm not going to make anybody food that I wouldn't eat. I would take the pans and kind of crack the corner of them into like a funnel, and I would funnel that down the sink drain, and then bring the tub, put the meat in a tub and bring it out there. Now you got to leave a little grease because it can't just like dry out in the heat table, like on the warming table. My manager yelled at me and said that the grease that I was throwing away was a waste of company time and a waste of company resources, and that it was intended that people eat all that grease. It looked like dog food. From that point forward, I never ate a standard taco from Mighty Taco again. I would stick with the microwaved steak. You know, that's a thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The chicken, which also gets like steamed, it's already like cooked and frozen. Like Mighty Taco might be the worst taco you've ever had. Hang on. Oh, so we have Andrew for the evening. Joseph Fryer. Is he going to talk more about software updates? We're going to give a lecture on synergy. Yes, Corporate Drew is here. Corporate Drew has a lot of talks about roster synergy. You know what I want to talk about is collaboration. And I want to talk about upscaling. Because these are all buzzwords that make me want to put a gun in my mouth. When I hear them inside the halls of my own office, I literally want to die. So what I want to point out with tonight's show as we go through this is that there will be consequences if the Buffalo Bills do what every single Bills fan out there is asking right now, and they go chasing a name, a supreme talent, a great white shark. You will pay for that, just in other ways.
How you get started with this? I got a gift here. In-laws just came back from Mexico, so I have Flora Decana 18. Wow. 18-year-old rum. I don't,
sipping rum is the best.
So I'll bring you. I put some in my wood cup, but I will bring you a glass.
You're gonna walk me over a Glencairn? Yes! Now I know this podcast is gonna be awesome.
I'm not gonna say what I wanted to say.
Oh, that smells delicious. So like what I did just to make sure that I didn't feel being agile is an excuse to not do the right thing. Hey, Andrew, we're being agile, guys. I don't listen. These ideas you have, we need agility. So that means we need to be able to eschew all of the good ideas you bring to my desk, and I need to be able to continue doing whatever the fuck I want. That's agility in today's modern office. It's hilarious. You're gonna give us a seminar on diversity? Super Mexican, you know me too well. I created a poll on Buffalo Bills subreddit, right? The official Buffalo Bills subreddit under an assumed name just so that no one would know it was associated with the podcast. And before I share the results with you, which were really, really interesting, I want to run through some of the candidates for this dubious designation that I'm about to talk about in terms of consequences of a Myles Garrett, consequences of a Max Crosby. The guys that you might look back at and go, shit, I kind of wish I hadn't done that, or man, we missed this guy. First of all, the entire 2022 rookie class. Is that Mike Riley? Mike Riley and I have had whether he remembers him or not, we had some drunken nights. The Moros clan. I love it.
Yeah, he's also my cousin on the other side of the family.
I know, it's amazing.
That's weird.
the family
It's weird that you went to college or know Mike Riley from college.
No, I know Mike Riley through a friend of mine marrying a girl.
Okay, Dan Ross's wife.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's a cousin on the other side of my family.
It's amazing. The 2022 rookie class, running back James Cook, wide receiver Khalil Shakir, linebacker Terrell Bernard, cornerback Christian Benford. Those are the first names that come to mind when you talk about consequences of a major acquisition by the Buffalo Bills this offseason, because those are four massive contributors to last year's success.
Imagine if we got Trent McDuffie.
I don't even want to talk. So why do you got to do this to me, Chris?
Sip that rum. It's so good.
Oh, my God. That should be illegal. So don't worry, Super Mexican. I said should be illegal. Don't get your hackles up. Now, first of all, that draft class alone should help quiet some of the Bean can't draft crowd. Everyone should have to take a timeout after that. When they look at the job that Bean did in that draft class of finding value outside of the first round. Unfortunately, there is no fifth-year option for any of these players. They are all going to be due for contract extensions at the same time. And while Shakir and Bernard might ultimately end up kind of getting contracts they don't threaten the market, right? There's no sticker shock coming. Or if there is, it still won't be a top. Chris, well, I'll get into it, but there's a great chance that one of Benford or Cook sees top 10 money, whether it's here or somewhere else. Those are just facts. Chris, Bean has not paid a running back anything significant. Do you think he starts now?
No, you could tell that in the draft history because it's been how far apart were Singletary, Moss, and Cook? There might be 1 year in between. And I think it's due to the fact that you don't pay running backs. So you're just constantly drafting running backs so you don't have to pay when they come up for contracts. Simple as that.
Ralph Wilson Sr. in the comments, rum and a quarter zip. What's next? Tequila and a parka? I mean, I drank a tequila soda the other night. I was feeling fat.
You on a diet?
I thought as I was pouring it, I thought about Ron Swanson.
So you were at home.
Where he goes, clear liquors are for rich white women. he goes, rich women on diets is what clear liquors are for. So, I will say, this is the thing of Bean hasn't paid a running back. He probably won't start now. Let's start with this conversation. We talked a little bit about it in the podcast we recorded earlier tonight. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, you can just replace Cook. Just go to the draft. This is a great class for him. Go get another running back." Great. That's awesome on its face. But you can't say that and then also turn around and go, trade away all of our top draft capital for a pass rusher. It's like, well, I thought we needed one of those picks to replace the running back we don't want to pay. I can't get rid of all my top 90 draft capital if I also need to draft a running back good enough to replace a James Cook that I'm either going to make part of the trade or I'm going to not pay and he's going to either hold out or pull a T. Higgins and every time he gets a hangnail, not play. I mean, you don't get to do both. Having your cake and eating it too only happens in Madden and NFL Twitter, where people get to postulate about all the things that might be possible. At this point, it's hard to see you acquiring a star pass rusher and still having James Cook on the roster. And that dynamic is absolutely going to shape the way our roster looks. And we need to start considering that most of those guys, at least one of them, maybe two of them, aren't long for the Bills roster. I mean, given that Shakir led the team in targets this past year and efficiency, just led the team in efficiency for a wide receiver, combined with his lack of touchdowns, I think his price will fall into a range where they'll find a reasonable contract. You know, the same way he was able to do with Matt Milano, the same way that Beam was able to get Taron Johnson signed to a reasonable contract before they had to use a franchise tag, before they had to talk about, hey, what if we have to trade him? They found a way to get it done. I think Shakir's agent will find a way to get it done because he has value, but he hasn't hit a ceiling. He didn't peerless price yet, you know? And so until he does that, he doesn't have a ton of market value. Why would he leave for a little bit more money to go to a less competitive football team? And can we agree that Shakir might actually be the most important one out of that entire group?
Yeah, you look at a receiving core as a whole, it's, a lot of unproven people. Keon hasn't proven himself yet, dealt with some injuries. Matt Collins has bounced around. I think we're his fifth team. And then Shakir is just sure-handed. You can trust him in all routes, all positions, inside, outside, middle of the field, outside. He catches everything.
Not just catches everything. Do you know that Khalil Shakir led the team in first down catches by a margin that's almost embarrassing, right? He caught 42 catches for a first down this year. Do you know who was second on the team?
Matt Collins.
Matt Collins. Okay. What do you think the number was?
13.
The difference was 13?
No, his number is 13.
No. I love that you said 13. His number was 29. 13 fewer than Khalil Shakir. Matt Collins was a free agent and is a free agent that they have to now negotiate with. These guys were the most effective wide receivers on the entire roster. And going out and spending $20 million guaranteed in a single season on a pass rusher it'll make it harder, not impossible, but harder to keep both Matt Collins and Khalil Shakir in the fold. I think that they find a way to get it done because Khalil Shakir hasn't peaked yet. He will. I guarantee you his best days are ahead of him. But then that opens up the question, would you rather have Khalil Shakir than James Cook?
Yes.
Who does a thing that's more important when you have the offensive line of the Buffalo Bills? And this is where I don't envy Brandon Beane at all because he has a lot of really, really difficult decisions to make. And there's a lot of interesting conversation we can have on the front of who should they sign, who should they retain, free agents on the outside over the next few weeks leading up to free agency. But for tonight, I'm willing to park this here, Chris. I have a Seagrams bet, the first one I'm making of the 2025 offseason. I'm going to bet you a Seagrams. All four of those players from the 2022 draft class that I just named will not be back. Like, not all four of them. Someone's going to go. Either Christian Benford, James Cook, Terrell Bernard, or Khalil Shakir. One of them will leave this team.
I mean, sorry, but I kind of agree with that. I'm leaning towards a Cook.
Anybody in the chat? Anybody in the chat want to take me up on the Seagrams bet? Because I'm pretty sure they're going to have to lose themselves. You don't want to lose a Bernard. He's proven himself to be one of the better talents in the NFL. You don't want to lose Christian Benford. Christian Benford is making a name for himself among cornerbacks.
You know who else is a free agent? Rasul Douglas.
Yeah. I got real sick of seeing his back this year. He was always chasing, and that's age. And this is why the Packers moved on from him when they did, because they said, look, we'd rather be early than late. And I think they did it right, getting rid of Douglas when they did. So I'll say this. I do not believe that the entirety of that core group of players from 2022's draft will be back with the team. And that's a byproduct of just the evolution of teams, rosters, and also this appetite to improve the defense right here, right now. So back to that poll and the thought exercise that I put out there on Reddit. And also, guys, you want to talk about buzzwords that some jackass in a shirt and a quarter zip would be telling you? How about thought exercise? I fucking hate that. I hate it when podcasters do it. I did it, and I immediately feel like a hack. Because I'm not up here talking about like it's not like we're talking about like, hey guys, let's postulate on philosophy and let's talk about how we live our lives. I'm over here drinking whiskey, rum, and beer at the same time, talking about a pretty good football team. Pretty good. Not a Super Bowl winning team, a pretty good football team. We're not solving the world's problems. And when you say thought exercise, it makes you sound like an idiot. I hate that. Here's what I posited to Bills fans. I gave them the option to pick amongst a group of players.
Do you want that up now?
Yeah, put that up there now. I want people to see it. I basically laid out, if the Bills were to do the thing that you're all asking for, it'll probably come with consequences. So who are the people that you would be, out of the candidates who you might lose, who would you be most comfortable with? And I gave them some names. And the numbers were kind of what you'd think they would be, but I'm with a caveat. Chris, would you have expected that many people to have voted for Greg Rousseau?
They would have to, well, I'm just saying this as a whole on this post that we're looking at right now on screen. I'm surprised that many people responded to you specifically. But they also didn't know that it was you. I guess you're using an assumed name.
I'm using an assumed name because I don't want them to know it's me, because some people don't like me very much over there, for reasons you all can understand. First of all, a couple takeaways. I expected Matt Milano to carry the day. I really did. He's an aging player with a long-standing injury history, and just for people saying that his injuries are all flukes, the reality is if you're perpetually knocking off rust, you're never going to be what you could be at your pinnacle. And now with your age added in, I don't know that that's ever a thing I'm going to get back. You also played a position that wasn't a glaring liability without you. It didn't kill us. Sophomore Dorian Williams showed that he was good enough in most phases of the game. And then the team, when they needed coverage, used dime packages. They used dime packages for the first time in forever, and it went well. It worked in a lot of football games. Cam Lewis, Jamarcus Ingram, they were up to the task of providing the pass protection that Dorian Williams just wasn't up to at this point. And I feel like that's a workable solution going forward compared to continuing to pay an exorbitant salary to a linebacker who costs a ton. I mean, this is a guy who the coaching staff itself was debating 3 weeks before the playoffs, going, we don't know who's going to start for the playoffs yet. You know, the next month is going to kind of show us whether Matt's ready, he's not ready. I can't have that for what he costs. As a player, Matt Milano will always have a warm spot in my heart. As a player at that price, I don't know that I can keep justifying it. I mean, if he's traded or released post June 1, Matt Milano's departure would free up over $9 million in cap space. Like, you'd have to go into the offseason knowing that, yes, you lost an elite linebacking talent. Or if you traded him away, you'd have to you lost an elite linebacking talent.
Is he elite?
I say yes.
Is he
all pro Matt Milano?
Even with the injuries.
Well,
that's going to affect him going forward.
Age, injury, price. I don't even know if you can trade his contract right now. And so with that in mind, you may have no choice but to move on just because you're trying to keep up with the market. Drew dressed up like a GM for this episode. Yes. We're talking about layoffs, and it takes hopefully Luigi's not waiting for me outside the door. I shouldn't laugh about that.
I could give you this lanyard and make over here that I have over here, my media pass from the Thrashers, make you look like a real GM.
What I will say about the poll that Chris just showed, Chris, can you do him a favor? Put it back up on screen. What I wasn't prepared for was just how many people who voted in this poll were ready to jettison Greg Rousseau into the sun in favor of Matt Milano, in favor of Terrell Bernard, and Teron Johnson. Like, obviously Matt Milano's age and injury, there's a lot of people who agree with me on him. But if you look at Greg Rousseau, it's like, wait a minute, I added Greg Rousseau in as a lark. I didn't think you people would take him. That's crazy. And now I want to talk about it. Chris, if you want to throw up there on the screen some of the commentary that some of the Reddit posters gave us for this one. A guy named, for those of you listening on audio, I'll read him for you. Fuzzy Chapter 9101 says, Greg Rousseau gets dominated often. He's not a difference maker on enough plays, and he's going to want money soon. Milano is that defense. It's a huge upgrade when playing. I get it, he's injured, but a full healthy year, the guy is instant Pro Bowl level. The other two are discounted studs. A guy named Pythonator. It's weird. The eye test says he's good, and the numbers say he's good, but people insist on Rousseau being this bad player for some reason. And someone responded, he's good, but is he $25 million good? I feel like this is Edmonds all over. A pretty good player, but not worth the contract they're going to get. And that is a really, really salient point. Let's talk about that one for a second. Brandon Beane once had to make a decision where he said, hey, I've got two linebackers who are both due paychecks. Who am I going to pay? I've committed money to Matt Milano already. Do I want to be paying two linebackers at the same time? Chris, he had an opportunity to invest in Tremaine Edmonds. Chose not to. Trusted that Terrell Bernard or one of the guys would take the job.
Yeah, we had that press conference clip that we played. Oh, we believe in the linebackers that we have on this roster. And turns out Brandon Beane was correct.
Well, we laughed at him when we called him an idiot because that's what we do over here because we're perennially wrong. Rhodes, it sounds like you gain a chromosome when you read. I love our listeners. You guys rule. At the same time, here's the problem. They only pay one linebacker at a time. Why do you think that Edmonds found his way to market? Because they were already paying Matt Milano. Well, now you've got a Matt Milano who's constantly banged up. He's missed a lot of time. He's been rusty for a lot of time. And they have a Terrell Bernard who is proving that he is a valuable piece of this defense. He plays like, I mean, we can get into it, but I'm going to. But the concept is they're not going to pay two linebackers. So if you're not losing Terrell Bernard, then you're probably losing Matt Milano just based on what they've shown us their proclivities are as a franchise. They do not want to be paying multiple linebackers that kind of money. They just don't. And so in that way, I feel like there's a problem here. So when we look at the other candidates on my list, and I'm interested to see what the chat thinks about that poll and just how they feel, who they would have voted for had they seen it.
A lot of them are on Groot. If you read the comments, a lot are. Groot, what was it? Ryan Christopher. Groot would be better if we had better defensive tackles. Oliver's too small. How big were the Eagles' defensive line? Proof in the pudding.
There it is. So then you look at the other guys in that list. Terrell Bernard. He led the team in tackles despite missing 4 games in 2024. Played more snaps than anybody else in the front 7 despite missing those 4 games. A 3-down linebacker who wears the green dot and calls your plays and also makes all your sight adjustments and calls in, as the play shifts, depending on what the play call is, he's the one signaling to safeties and signaling to the DBs like, hey, everybody shift. The reality is Terrell Bernard should have been as low as he was on that fan vote, on that poll list. Because realistically, he shouldn't break the bank on an extension. I look at what other guys are being paid. Alex Anzalone, everyone knew what he meant to that Lions defense when he broke his arm. $7.2 million cap hit for this season. Josie Jewell, the linebacker for what was a stud defense in Denver. $7.8 million 2026 and 2025 cap hit. There's going to be 5 middle linebackers with double-digit cap hits for 2025 and just 3 for 2026. And when you look at who they are, it's Tremaine Edmonds, it's Roquan Smith, it's Patrick Queen, it's CJ Mosley. You could call that some of the worst linebacker investments of cash in our adult lives. Those are teams who paid heavily for linebacker play and got nowhere near the level of return you need to get for that kind of money. They paid borderline defensive end money. They paid what is it, Leonard Floyd money. And they got nothing for their return. Do we want to be in that same boat? Probably not. Also, I don't think he would be because everybody else is making 8 or less. I think Terrell Bernard slots in at a reasonable salary on a 4-year deal, and you keep him. And then what that does is they then look at Milano and go, listen, we can't have $30 million wrapped up in this defensive, this linebacker thing. We have to figure something out. I believe that that's why Matt Milano probably is the guy, and rightfully so, judging by the poll. And I like that Terrell Bernard was the lowest one chosen by fans. Cornerback Teron Johnson was an inclusion on this list that got everybody in the comments panties in a bunch. 50 people commented on this thing, and out of those 50, at least 6 of them told me I was a moron for letting Teron Johnson even be on the list. This is stupid. This list doesn't matter. I downvoted because, I downvoted this list because Teron Johnson's on it. You're an idiot. Okay. Nobody knows why I'd bring up Teron Johnson in a conversation of who we might lose because I've gotten so used to seeing him as a staple of the Buffalo Bills defense. Chris, he is a core player of this team. He someday will have his name on the wall of the new stadium, right? The Wall of Fame?
Yes. Right next to OJ.
I hope not. He needs to be on the wall in the new stadium. I guarantee you there will be a moment, right? He's had everything. He's had playoff big plays. He's made splash plays in the regular season, game-sealing plays for the Buffalo Bills. And there will be a day where they bring him out on the field in the new stadium and he leads the charge doing the Legends of the Game ceremony before kickoff. And I get a chance to celebrate Teron Johnson having been a part of this franchise. But if we're being completely objective, here's some dynamics you have to think about. Teron's got a slowly growing list of injuries. For those of you who saw him with the harness, go over to bangedupbills.com and just look at his injury list and look at the number of shoulder subluxations he talks about when it comes to Teron. It's not huge, but when your joints start giving out on you and you're turning 30, it's not great. He plays through most of his injuries, which I give him a ton of credit for. The dude is an animal. You're also under 200 pounds. And at a certain point, football becomes a game of physics. At the end of the 2025-2026 season, Teron Johnson's going to be 30 years old, and he's going to carry double-digit cap hits for the last 2 years of his contract. Now, his contract was built specifically to have an out. There's Spin. There you are, buddy. I got your stuff boxed up. It's going to go out tomorrow morning.
Allegedly.
No, not allegedly. I already have the...
Allegedly.
I have the label. I just didn't... Things got wild this weekend. Teron Johnson, okay? When you think about what he costs and the way that they structured Teron Johnson's contract, the only out in his deal is next offseason. He will either count double digit against your cap or we save $7 million by cutting him. Chris, you don't do that unless you don't plan on that player being here or you plan on him renegotiating before then, right?
Correct.
So with that in mind, like that's the most salient point of this conversation. Brandon Beane built that contract to give himself an out on a 30-year-old nickel cornerback, no matter how well he was playing, right? Just in case he wasn't playing like a top 20 paid defensive NFL back anymore. Defensive back. Now, regardless of whether he is or not, the team might still not be able to pay a guy like a Greg Rousseau and also a guy like a Terrell Bernard and then look at Teron Johnson and go, yeah, we can afford double-digit cap hit here and nickel corner. They may decide that this just is not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. I don't know, man. If there's a star defensive end across the line from Greg Rousseau in 2025, and they have to pay that star defensive end, and they also have to pay Greg Rousseau, I don't know. Are you going to continue investing in an aging defensive back whose best football might have been behind him?
I don't think so.
I think that it'll make a lot of Bills fans angry, but the concept is he is very much vulnerable to what the Bills do this offseason. The big swings that they make will put Teron Johnson directly in the crosshairs of future cap considerations. Here we go. Oh, stop. When people on Reddit ask about podcasts, I rep the hell out of you. There we go, Joe Fryer. Hang on. Scroll down. I want to see Joe Fryer. What do you say there? Where else are you going to listen to a semi-articulate drunk ramble about the Bills? Yes!
I don't know, whatever parking lot you tailgate in. Yeah, we're not very. I'll search Reddit specific posts about podcasts.
Of course you do.
Just to see what people. Reddit does not like us because we don't offer a. I would say your ESPN Fox Sports style, because you can't watch Nick Wright open up a Alexander Keith's on camera and drink it. We're a different animal.
How do we feel in the chat and out there? Tweet at us at Rockpile Report. I want to hear your feedback. How do we feel about a potential Teron Johnson loss if the Bills do the thing that everybody's screaming for and go out and land themselves a big fish at defensive end? Would it upset you? Would you just understand, like, hey, they probably have a defensive plan in place. They'll play more nickel. They'll rotate Cam Lewis in until they groom a guy to take the job. I mean, Teron Johnson, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, won the starting position at nickel corner as a rookie, didn't he?
Yeah.
So with that said, feels like the new
D'Amato's referencing a show we just did.
Yep, feels like the new defensive coaching signal a meaningful philosophical change and opens the door for players like Teron to leave. 100%. It seems like there's a changing of the guard ahead of. This is why I love this coaching staff, because they make decisions before they have to make decisions. They go, hey, let's pad things and let's set up. What do you call them, Chris? Like whenever I have a decision to make, I'm always like, can I make my peace with the worst case outcome? And can I build some things into my decision making where I say, okay, at least I have X. And X can help me get over the hump if the worst case scenario occurs. Like, let's say we have to draft a rookie because we have to let Teron Johnson go. He won't renegotiate. He won't. Well, exactly, Joe Fryer. We all think that Johnson started. And then you take a look at how they've treated him since then. Every time he's healthy, he's on the field. What I don't want to see happen is Bills fans become enamored with the idea of we just always have a lockdown nickel corner who's out there. Things may change. And it may be just simply doing business. Again, this is what you all want. This is what you guys want. You want to bring in a guy who's going to make about $20 million a year, close to what Josh is getting paid, to be a pass rusher and be a star on your defensive line. There is a cost. We haven't had to deal with that throughout the Josh Allen era because the Von Miller contract was pretty smartly constructed from the get-go. And at the same time, that offense of his didn't hurt that we were able to force him to restructure his contract. And when I say that offense, I mean, he may or may not have done something disgusting. And if he did, fuck him, I don't care. I don't idolize these players. I recognize that they're fallible as human beings. With that said, Teron Johnson is the most polarizing part of this entire thing to me outside of Greg Rousseau, because nobody seems to grasp the fact that an old nickel corner might not be a good fit for this football team long term. Looking at the chat, hear me out. Bishop in is the nickel, draft another safety. These are all options that are on the table. HemJ718, that's a great point. Drew needs to hook up with George Thorogood to write the new song to open the show. One rum, one Malort, 6 beers. This is why the comment section rules. I love this show. I love that we get to do this. And Spin rightfully points out, Johnson started, then got benched, and then when he got put back in, he took off. There's no telling you that a rookie can't do that with the right DB coaching. And it kind of, to D'Amato's point, we did just bring in new defensive backs coach.
Yeah, I asked in the chat if Pellegrino, I believe, was titled nickel coach is his official title. So if you're going to bring in a coach and specifically title him nickel coach, that would tell me that you find nickel corner to be very important.
It's going to be a need soon. And that's where I feel like I don't understand why more people weren't on Teron Johnson leaving the roster if we make this move. And then finally, Greg Rousseau, which is, he's the silver tuna, right? He's the best edge on the team. Overall skill set, production, he is the most proficient edge player we have on the roster right now. He's more consistent against the run than anybody else. He gets more consistent pressure than Epinesa, Smoot, any journeyman dickhead you're going to bring in off the line, off the free agent wire or off your practice squad. He is the only top 51 caliber player on the 2025 roster who doesn't generate a cap hit if he's traded. And now I know for a fact the people who voted for him do not know this. His 5th year option is fully guaranteed, but if you trade them, there is no dead cap assumption. It's not like, Chris, like if we trade Matt Milano now, we still eat a dead cap. We would have to trade him after June 1st. You'd have to agree in principle on a trade with a team like Cleveland and say, hey, we're going to include Matt Milano and we're going to do all these things. It's just going to happen in June. And then as soon as that happens, everyone gets to realize the cap savings and everything goes through. For Rousseau, you could trade that guy and it wouldn't cost you anything. But I know for a fact that people voting for this or who are in the chat saying Rousseau can be moved on from. You didn't know that. Fucking liars. If you say you did, you don't. 36-year-old Von Miller made $24 million in 2024. Terrible contract. 100% correct. They have spent so much money trying to solve this problem and they haven't hit it. So if you have a home run, don't go for the old guy. I almost feel like this is pushing them, Chris, more in the direction of a guy like a Max Crosby than a Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah.
Don't go after the guy who's 30 because this will evaporate quickly. Roy Collins says he knew it. Go after the guy who has upside and youth in his favor. Now, what I will say is that if the Bills don't think they're close to getting to what Bean will set as his internal number, he does that for every player. He goes, we have a price, and if you can't meet it, I wish you the best of luck. He did it with Jordan Phillips. He did it with Shaq Lawson. He's done it with Levi Wallace. He's done it with, Chris, how many other players? Jordan Poyer. He was like, Jordan, we have a number for you. If you don't want to meet it, Jordan, I love you, but go find that money. And Jordan Poyer went out there on a free agency tour and came back to Buffalo for like $1.8 million. I mean, he sucked, but he was $1.8 million. I think that it's going to be like, if the Bills don't feel like Rousseau is close to their internal number, you kind of have to explore what he might be worth in a trade, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's just going to instantly free up $13 million worth of cap space. If you're the guy who's trying to trade for a generational pass rush talent and you go, wait a minute, I could get rid of a guy who I think is good, I want to keep around, but he doesn't want to agree on a reasonable contract. We've watched him move on from guys like him. And he goes, oh, wait a minute, if I trade him, I free up $13 million. I could just pay. I could buy all kinds of stuff with that money. I feel like Rousseau's camp has to know that. And it almost might help the Buffalo Bills to a certain degree when it comes to those contract negotiations. Also, for what it's worth, trading or releasing Epinesa frees up $3 million in cap space. If you as a team believe that Solomon can be what Epinesa was for you, which is just a borderline rotational pass rusher and not a liability against the run, I don't know. Maybe that departure makes more sense. I'll say this. The Greg Rousseau component of him being on the team, it's very complicated. It's very complex. The idea that people think he gets dominated. Chris, like I'm going to come out here now and espouse my appreciation for what Greg Rousseau is. Do you know who got dominated in a Bills uniform as an edge player? Aaron Mabin. Aaron Mabin played 2 years and got no sacks. It was hilarious. He was cut after a couple years. I mean, legendary Bills offensive lineman Ed Wang was manhandling Aaron Mabin in training camp. And that's when the local media and everybody, I think even GM realized, oh, fuck, we made a mistake. Aaron Mabin shouldn't be here. Greg Rousseau has never been dominated. He's been double teamed to death. He's been rendered ineffective because the interior defensive line can't draw enough attention. But him personally being dominated, it's one of the weirdest critiques of his entire game. He gets attention on a 2-to-1 ratio compared to anybody else in the defensive line besides Ed Oliver. And that's where I feel like this discourse comes from. It's shocking to me that so many people want to move on from Greg Rousseau. Now, I just laid out all the ways you could maybe have to. But at the same time, Chris, what does our defensive line look like? Let's say we do trade for a Max Crosby. And then you have to get rid of Greg Rousseau. Or you can't agree to a long-term contract, or he's part of the trade. What does our defensive line look like without him?
I mean, I'll take Max Crosby. If you have to trade for Crosby and you got to make Rousseau part of it, I will 100% do that to get Max Crosby in the building.
Roy Collins goes, Mabin got 6 sacks with the Jets. Yeah, and what did the Jets do with those 6 sacks? Or was it all in garbage time? Context matters. It matters. Here's what I'll say. Getting rid of Rousseau or trading him to obtain a Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, everybody who says I'm willing to move on from Greg Rousseau if it means getting this star pass rusher, it's the same thing I used to do walking out the front door of Good Times, trying to stumble back to my apartment after an E.J. Manuel versus the Steelers game. Chris, you were there with me. E.J. Manuel Steelers at Good Times. In Depew. I got drunk, threw a beer across the bar. Everyone got mad at me. I slunk out the back door when no one was looking.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Yeah, I do. I recall that. That's how I know it was a bad day. What you're doing by doing what you're talking about here is taking 3 steps forward, but 1.5 back. That's what happens. It's kind of like how, Chris, what would our line look like? Now you have one premier pass rusher. Great. We just have one more person to double team. What have you done to rebuild the D tackle room? Because if the answer is nothing, all you've done is you've shifted your eggs into another basket. You've taken all your problems and you've put them on one more player. And now you go, oh, well, it's Max Crosby. But Max Crosby's really talented. I just wish there was another guy on the other side who could get home or could help him not be double teamed all the time. So does every team in the NFL. There's a reason that the team that these guys play for have not been to the playoffs. It's because you can't make a good team out of good pass rush. You can't. That alone does not get you to the playoffs. Otherwise, the year that the Bills had the cold front under Rex Ryan, they would have made the show. True or false, Chris?
True. I think it was under Marone. Didn't they go 9-7 with Marone?
Well, that was the tail end of the cold front. That was I'm talking about Mario Williams in his prime when he was getting
when we signed him,
double-digit sacks a year. It's MB41, Greg Rousseau had 3 sacks in his first game for the 2024-2025 season and had 5 sacks the rest of the season. I'm good on paying him. Would make a great piece of a trade package. See? This is what I'm talking about. This is the discourse I'm talking about. It's going on right now over there at One Bills Drive. The idiocy that we're involved in here with Beers and you guys is actually happening in earnest over there at One Bills Drive right now. They're having these conversations going, how do we figure this out? Who wants to sign? Who do we need to sign? Who do we need to pay? Who do we not want to lose? How do we come out of this a better football team while retaining a core that can go win a Super Bowl? And maybe jettisoning or trading away a player or two who has like upside, but not enough upside that will miss them. I think Greg Rousseau getting rid of, you need a Greg Rousseau plus a star pass rusher to be a good defensive line in 2025, 2026. Am I crazy for saying that?
No.
I think you need Greg Rousseau more than most other players on this team. When you look at the defense, I need a Benford. I need a Terrell Bernard to lead and kind of organize the defense. I need a defensive end. You know who's been there is Rousseau. Sturdy against the run, doesn't collapse. He collapses pockets. He crushes them. He doesn't get good pass rush, but he also contains escape. And at the same time, he does a great job against the run. Tackles for loss. Pressuring running backs back into being even just bending the pocket back in so that running backs have to divert their path. Those are stats that don't get tracked, but if you watch the tape, Greg Rousseau does it in spades. He's the guy that you need on the other side of a star pass rusher in order to make our defensive line elite. And everyone keeps saying, well, just get rid of him and replace him with another thing and it'll be fine. No, you need them both. You need all of it. You have to have all of it, I think, in order for it to work. If anything, the defensive interior needs the most work. Doug Farrar was on Chopin the Bulldog this week. And he was talking about the idea of because a lot of this is recency bias.
Did he tell us why he blocked us?
I should have called in and demanded to know why Doug Farrar blocked us on Twitter. I go, is it because I made fun of you, your stupid mock drafts? What happens is you look at that Eagles game against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and you assume, they got pressure with 4. They got pressure with 4. It's repeatable. We just go get the best defensive lineman we can and we'll win with 4. No. What you don't understand is that you know where they won? They didn't win by rushing the interior of the line. They ran stunts. They ran stunts to the outside of the offensive line. And it completely took Creed Humphrey, their best blocker, out of the game. This is Doug Farrar explaining why when you go into draft talk and you go into trade talk and you talk about this, you can't take scheme out of the equation. Now, hopefully that was something the Buffalo Bills brass was paying attention to, where they go, fuck, what do you know about stunts? And you've got Bobby Babbitt sitting there going, I don't know. And they go, fuck it, bring in Ryan Nielsen. Get him in here. Bring Ryan Nielsen in right now so that he can teach us about these stunts, these unorthodox pressure packages. Because that's how the Eagles beat them. It wasn't that they just went out there, played them heads up, man on man, and all of their pass rushers were better than all of the Chiefs' pass protectors. It still takes scheme. The coaching changes, though, Chris. Pellegrino, Nielsen, we talked about him last week. Those matter. That's going to mean a huge difference in what we're going to see on the field.
You know, I checked while we were discussing this. Coaching changes have not been updated officially on the Bills website yet.
Ooh. Are these alleged signings?
I guess. Usually the teams put out a statement like, we have our here's our coaching staff for 2025. Bills haven't done that yet. I mean, it's rumored that we got Nielsen and Pellegrino in, but they're not listed on the team website as of yet.
Guys, you guys in the chat make my night. I love that we get to do this. These live shows are probably the most fun part of doing podcasts now, Chris. Remember when we used to sit back here and have husband and wife fights?
Oh, yeah, we would. Drew and I would fight all the time off camera about how things go. I mean, I will say this. So for those that come back to, we're going to have a show out Friday night. We're going to set it as a premiere. So when you see the thumbnail for that show, just know that you and I texted about what the thumbnail should be for the show that we recorded. And I had asked Drew, I said, so do you want like a picture of Brandon Beane and something about tags as the thumbnail? And no, you said tags. What do you mean tags? Brandon Beane hasn't used the tag. And I got so mad that let's go with Brandon Beane on the thumbnail with something, whatever we're going to discuss, a little quip that could maybe engage people to click on the video. And you were like, tags? What are you talking? Like you came at me like you just said we were talking about the franchise tag. Now you're coming at me like we're not. So I got mad and I went out and I snowblowed the driveway. And I didn't respond to you.
Guys,
we check out the thumbnail for the next show.
We love-hate each other over here at the Rock Pile Report. But we're tied to each other forever, and we'll die down here in this basement. That's how it's going to end. Here's what I want to know. Am I wrong for wanting to build a better all-around defensive line and not issuing a Greg Rousseau? Like, I know that he's not elite, but he's very good in a handful of facets that you must have in order to be a good defensive line. And even Leonard Floyd wasn't a good run defender. This guy gives us pressures. He gives us sacks. He gives us things. And then he also just, I don't know. I really want to know, what do you guys think? Put it in the chat. Tweet us at Rock Pile Report on X. We're still over there. Chris, we have a blue sky.
We do.
I just know that there are going to be things that once we rip the Band-Aid off and make this move that everybody's screaming for, there's going to be things we're going to have to give up in order to get it. And I want everyone to go into it with eyes wide open. There will be a cost. And so when it comes, don't be shocked if it doesn't feel like we took a step back. It's just, what steps back can you live with? Given the coaching staff hires and everything else, can we coach up other players? Can we find scheme things that make up for the departure of a Teron Johnson? Or, hey, Chris, the trade of a Teron Johnson?
Yeah. Roy Collins wants to know, do you have a number for Groot?
For me, the number I'd be willing to pay for Groot, I'll tell you what, I don't have an exact number, but I'll tell you this. He doesn't get top 10 defensive end money because he doesn't get the sacks. He doesn't get the pressures.
As stated before in the comments, 3 in the first game, 5 the rest of the year.
Exactly.
There you go.
And this is where I feel like he's another Matt Milano, which we talked about in the show that we recorded before here, talking about how Brandon Beane has avoided the franchise tag, but he's done it because he sets decent value and then negotiates well. I feel like he's one of those candidates where he'll sign a deal that will actually surprise people in terms of how reasonable it is. The people who think that he's not worth retaining are out of their mind, to me. But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm overvaluing run defense. I don't know, for a defense that doesn't have any, that really struggles with it. And maybe I'm conflating defensive end issues when they should be defensive tackle issues. There's a lot baked in there. All I know is that we have weeks to talk about these things, and tonight this poll was on my mind, and I'm happy I got to talk about it, and I'm happy you all got to be here for it. Spin, I'm interested in this offseason because all the hires and everything is pointing towards playing more man coverage. Not saying we're switching the entire play. No, you're 100% correct, Spin. Everything that we're doing is geared towards us shifting philosophy. Ipso facto, you almost want a defensive end like Greg Rousseau around, because that's a guy who can come in and say, hey, I know he can set an edge and he's not going to let the quarterback escape, and he's not going to let he will eliminate escape routes, and he'll also divert running backs. If we're going to play man, teams will run. Running quarterbacks will think they can take off on us. Greg Rousseau does a really good job in those moments. I like this. I just think that the Buffalo Bills have more up their sleeve than most of us are thinking, but you also have to think about the consequences of what these choices they might make are. Let's make our peace with them now so no one's screaming into the ether later. Guys, this has been fun. I love that you all showed up to critique my wardrobe and my thoughts. Chris, I like that no one makes fun of you.
No.
How have you not been made fun of?
Because I have excellent hair. That's why. Quarter zip with excellent hair.
Is that all it takes?
Yeah.
You're suddenly immune from criticism?
Correct.
Guys, I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pile Report.